Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me we've got Mac.
Good evening.
Unfortunately, Gio won't be able to join us as he, much like his team, Manchester United, are preparing for this weekend. Don't worry, today we'll be going over all the action from this week's Europa League final between Roma and Sevilla, and we'll also preview the FA Cup final, which happens to be a Manchester derby. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's dive straight into it, Mac. Match in the middle of the week, which I think kind of took us by surprise, but pleasant surprise if I may say so. Roma Sevilla playing that very, very important Europa League final because both teams needed to win this to sort of secure a Champions League spot. They tied after 90 minutes, and then Sevilla, as they always do, win the Europa League. What were your thoughts on this game, Matt?
It seems like the battle of whose record's going to stand more, in my opinion, going in. The talk was Sevilla's record in regards to their performances in the Europa League. This now being their seventh title win. They've won in every single final that they've reached in the Europa League. In contrast to Jose Mourinho in the previous matchups in either every European competition he's been in, if it be in the Champions League, Europa League, or newly formed Conference League, he's won out. So it's which kind of streak, which record is going to be broken there. And unfortunately for a lot of the Mourinho stands out there in the media, on the Twitter spheres, it was the Mourinho record. And he was just as disappointed as everybody else online. And my favorite, I guess, moment of the match, less so even than, I know I'm fast forwarding and we're talking about the end of the game, but arguing with, I think is Anthony Taylor, the referee, Englishman referee, after the game, is when he gets the second place medal and like immediately gives it to Fan. He's like, I'm done. I hate this. This is stupid. Pure Mourinho moments, and that's going to be locked into memes for years. I'm excited. I love that. But overall, in terms of the spectacle of the game, it was a surprise because there wasn't much hullabaloo. There wasn't much kind of talk about this game, given the fact that the game that we're going to be talking about shortly, the FA Cup final, that's probably more of the focus in going into the Champions League final next week. But this game came out, it was very, very exciting, had key moments from both teams, had really everything you would ask for in terms of great moments, big mistakes, controversial calls. It had everything to make it an exciting game. So I'm very happy to talk about it today.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of weird that both teams still have one league game to play. So the fact that this game was played sort of before the league season finished is weird, but hey, there's a lot to talk about in this game, so let's dive straight into it. I think it's fair to say Roma started the game a little bit better than Sevilla, and like you mentioned, a lot of action, a lot of yellow cards, and Dybala does open the scoring for Roma after Roma win the ball sort of in the middle of the field after a sort of failed clearance by Jesus Navas, who after he's clears the ball, there's a lot of space between him and the center back Bade, and then the ball gets played through by Mancini, who will be involved later on in the game. Dybala does great, I think, to get that touch in between the two defenders and finish it far post. And yeah, someone I think we kind of forgot about because he hasn't been really, and no disrespect to Roma, hasn't been in the Napoli's or the Juventus or even any of the Milan teams' radar so far this season because of his involvement with Roma. There's still quality in that play. What would you think about that goal, Mac?
I thought it was phenomenal. Everything is in there, is inside the first touch. We're just be able to set it up, give him the opportunity to strike. Where, well, majority of the time you see, because it was not easy as a pass to be able to kind of get sifted on through, because Mancini put it in very, very hard and low, where he just kind of took it in stride, be able to put himself in front to, on the second touch, already be able to hit it with a strike. Where a lot of times you'll see strikers or attackers in those positions take 3 or 4 touches to tee themselves up, and by doing so, lose the opportunity to be able to get that shot on target. And with the second touch, it put the goalkeeper Bono completely out of the loop there, where he really didn't have an opportunity to get down and react because of the swiftness of the strike. So overall, Dybala, I know that there's been, I think it's fair to say he's had a lot of highs and a lot of lows throughout his career, and a lot of criticism for Argentina previously before Juventus. But I think in moments like this, you do see why there's so much talk about him, because he does have that level of quality that it's very difficult to find. So it's full credit to him for taking on that strike, and it really kind of encapsulates a lot of what the first half was for Roma, where by far, in my opinion, if you just kind of screen grabbed the first 45 minutes and sat down at halftime, there was a clear winner, and there's probably only one team going to win this. But of course, that's why football is a game of two halves, and Roma dominated the first half, and it was really the 6th minute of added time with Rakitic hitting the post that really kind of, it rang through the second half, kind of the effect of that shot where Sevilla's like, oh no, we're in this game, we're going to be able to compete. And that was, for me, the biggest turning point, where even though it didn't kind of create a goal, it created a momentum. It created an opportunity. It's like, hey, we are inches away. We deserve a goal back. We need a good goal back. And later on into the second half, that's why you saw Sevilla start to get into the play more.
Yeah, exactly. And final sort of stats for the game, over 65% possession for Sevilla. They came out in the second half the stronger team, and overall in the game, Sevilla had more shots over Roma in total. And right from the go in the second half, Sevilla started on the front foot as they needed to, and we kind of expected this to happen. Mourinho's team would go up a goal in a final. What else are we going to expect? A Mourinho masterclass with a solid defensive display, but the player who I would say did have a part in a fault in the first Roma goal becomes a provider. Jesus Navas down the right-hand side, whips a nice ball in, and Mancini, who is trying to put off the attacker, he's actually the one who assisted the first goal, ends up scoring an own goal. And I think it really cancels out, and it was very, very tight at that point between both teams. Then there is a goal line scramble for Roma not too long after that, and then for Sevilla, a penalty call that was given by Anthony Taylor, but VAR overturned. VAR suggested Anthony Taylor take a look. Overall, I think there's a lot of people saying, they have a gripe about how the referee refereed that match, especially now online. We see a lot about that cross coming in, hitting the Sevilla player in the hand. But overall, I felt it was quite well managed, and I don't think it was too one way or the other. I think it was a fair result after 90, and especially after 120, and it was just that tight that it had to be settled on penalties. Did you have anything else in the match that really stuck out to you, Mac?
In regards to the penalty shout for Sevilla, so for one, the penalty shout against Roma, in which it was called but then overturned, I think it was by Ocampos being taken down. That right. For me, that was the right decision to overturn that with VAR in regards, because he did get the slightest touch on the ball. So I thought that was the purpose of VAR, and kind of showed the purpose of it in that moment. On the other side, though, that Sevilla handball, that for me was clear and obvious. That's the exact same thing as where we saw why VAR is important and why VAR still has a lot of work to do in regards to, because there's still human error in this, where you see the reaction of the Sevilla central defender, the name escapes me, is where there is the twitch of, okay, we're going to keep our hand straight, kind of in a defensive position, and then you just kind of see a jerk up of one hand, and by that, in effect, is kind of, it's unfortunate, it may not be intentional, but there is a change, there is some sort of kind of body reaction there of an intent, where you've seen a lot, and given the distance of it too as well, where there was quite a lot of time for him to be able to put his hand out of the way versus him putting his hand in the way. I feel like that definitely should have been a goal, and why I guess to kind of follow up, the Mourinho stands there are going to look back at that as like, he got screwed over, kind of, there he was, the whole world's against him, that type of thing, where, what, it's similar in a lot of ways, where I think his reaction, maybe not to this extent, but there's always been a lot of talk of that Chelsea-Barca game. What was it for when there was 100 different penalty shouts against Chelsea?
Yeah, and then you see the Drogba coming out.
Yeah.
The cameras.
So, and Mourinho being the chosen one, everyone's against me type of thing. So you definitely feeds into that mentality, that mistake. But aside from that, there was nothing egregious, but that in and itself is enough for a lot of the Mourinho stands to live another day of why he should have won his 6th consecutive European title, and winning every single one of them that he does reach the finals, right? So overall, that did stick out to me. I don't know if we want to switch over and jump over to the penalty shootout right away, because I do have some thoughts on that. I wanted to be able to kind of give your idea, see what your thought process was, because Roma, in my opinion, looking at the shooters that they put out initially. It was very confusing to me because you really had 3 defensive-oriented players. You really didn't have a kind of. I understand that Abraham come off. Roma's, I think, from all the reports that I've read, have been more suspect in their penalty conversions thus far this year. But it felt like that they missed an opportunity to kind of put people that are a little bit more experienced as they to take a penalty. Like Bellotti, who played well in the game, I think has taken penalties for Roma this year. Didn't even get a chance in the first 3. So I don't know. I think it goes back to the thing where it very is reminiscent to me of Neymar in the the Olympics when he takes the last penalty for Barcelona for Brazil, and he has that moment. He's the crown prince. He's the future star. Everything's built around him. So we want to give him that moment. Versus, it could have very easily gone the other way, and he never has an opportunity to take one. Right. So you want to put your best players first, and it felt like that was a mistake from Mourinho, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think if you're the manager, if you're Mourinho, do you structure it the same way as like him? You set up your players in the most crucial moments to take that penalty, the highest pressure, and you have your best penalty then, or is it first for you? What do you think?
No, I agree in terms of the selection for penalty takers 1 through 5, not just which 5 players are going to take it. I think you have to get the first couple, your best penalty takers. Those will be the ones taking the first 2-3 penalties in the shootout. You got to get yourself get those chances in and get yourself on the board as soon as possible. Granted, they did get on the board with the first penalty, but like you said, 2 defenders following up in the second and third penalty shots. You never really have as much confidence in them as you would as an attacker. And yeah, like you said, Abraham come off from injury. Apparently, Dybala was a doubt to even start the game, so he had to come off in the second half. So they are a little bit hamstrung in terms of their options. But even then, if you have more so attacking players coming on to take penalties, I think you should structure it so that they are the first penalty takers in that position. Unluckily for Roma, it didn't happen that way. But for Sevilla, I think perfectly well done. 4 penalty takers, 4 scorers, and of course, who scores the last one, Mac? Montiel, the same penalty taker for Argentina, who won them that penalty shootout against France in the World Cup. And what a fairy tale, I guess, for him and those Sevilla players now qualifying for the Champions League. And not sure if you saw it, but there's a lot of tweets about Liverpool fans saying, thankfully we have no more Sevilla in the Europa League, so we can finally rest calm. And then there's people saying, don't worry, they're gonna exit the Champions League and come back to the Europa League and knock us out. But yeah, still impressive, 7th time winning it. Never lost it in the finals, and really something to tip your hat off to. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I think it's important for them because what they're able to do now, I think they're aiming for the English double where they go to the Champions League knockout round. They get Champions League group stages. They get tied in with Manchester United, destroy them just like they did in the Europa League, and then get to go back down to be able to face Liverpool in the knockout rounds in the Europa League. That's prime Sevilla madness right there, and that would it'd be hilarious because have you seen a lot of like the circle memes where it's Sevilla plays poorly in La Liga, gets to Europa League, he wins Europa League, gets knocked out of Champions League, does not play well in Liga. Have that it's like their circle of life in some ways. It's beautiful symmetry, right? So you love to see it, and the consistent that they have. It's kind of I would be very interested to see in terms of the philosophy of the club, and if you're gonna go to them and talk to them about it and really kind of sit down, it's because they're extremely successful in this competition, and obviously it's a very difficult competition to win. Not many clubs have done it, but the consistency they have there, but the reason why you are there is because you failed somewhere else, right? It's a very weird dichotomy that you're looking at within the club. It's like, okay, we can't seem to, make it deep into the Champions League because we've gotten good enough there, but in knockout round football, we're exceptional, and in Liga we're something like meh. Like it's very weird to see how they lay out their priorities. Where it's kind of like a lot of the Premier League teams, because that's kind of the league that we talk about, is like, for example, Arsenal's like, hey, we want to get knocked out of every competition because we want to focus on the Premier League. They're like, Sevilla's like, wait, No, that is not the correct way to do that. We want to screw every other competition. For the one competition no one wants to play in, we're always going to win. So it's very interesting how the clubs set themselves up like this. But you got to give them credit. And in terms of Montiel himself, kind of having his career year, if Messi wins a Ballon d'Or as an example, that should be the first words. It should have gone to Montiel. Like, I apologize to Lewandowski. Now I'm going to apologize to Montiel. He's kind of been the hero, So it's a perfect circle of life with everything that's happened in terms of Europa League, Montiel, all thing like that. So it's lovely to see.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think something else that's lovely to see is a player by the name of Alex Telles now winning the Europa League. Manchester United player, of course, Alex Telles, who was knocked out by Sevilla in the same competition last year in the semifinals, and the script to write this, it just writes itself as well. We have Brian Hill and Eric Lamela, former Spurs players, winning that competition again, and further sort of adds on to the narrative that you leave Spurs and you win trophies. But on that note, congrats to Sevilla. We'll see what happens with Roma. There are a lot of rumors saying that Mourinho may not be there at the start of next season, so that's something interesting for them to see how they navigate through that. But a lot to happen in the off season. But on that note, let's take a quick break here, Mac, and then we'll be back previewing the FA Cup final. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now discussing the big one, the FA Cup final between Manchester City and Manchester United. This, of course, is the road. Sorry, this is another part of the journey for Man City to try to secure the elusive treble. But also, Manchester United could finish the season with two trophies. Eric Ten Hag's first season in charge. Between these two teams, there's been 165 matches. Man U have won 65 of them. City have won 52, and 48 of them have been draws. But for this one specifically, Mac, how do you see this game playing out?
This is an absolutely fascinating game because there's a lot to play for both teams. At the same time, you feel like Manchester United have a lot more riding on this game, considering this is their last important game of the season, whereas Man City still have that Champions League final within another week, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how these lineups are done, how these managers kind of focus their players in, and their historical context. Because based off form, based off injury, you're looking at Man City being the heavy favorite, and I can understand that, given that looks like Anthony Martial is going to not be part of the team, as well as Anthony seems a heavy doubt. So in all likelihood, from reports, it looks like it's going to be a Rashford, Jadon Sancho, and Garnacho front three, which I guess that thus far the season really haven't played a whole lot together as a trio, so we don't know what we're going to get out them. But as a historical matchup between these two teams, they played all those games as you talked about, but this is the first ever major final between these two teams. They've never played against each other in this big stage of a game. So just with it being a derby, all those factors, even the matches that they had this year where you would think they were more lopsided, but they came out even. So it's absolutely a fascinating matchup. And like I said, I think that this is vitally important for both teams to come out, and for Man City in some ways come out very healthy. Because I think, as I talked about with Manchester United's injuries, a couple players had, as kind of Pep Guardiola put it, as a couple niggles going into this game with Jack Grealish, Kevin De Bruyne, not necessarily 100% fit. So it'll be interesting to see, does he utilize them? Or if so, is it for a short time period? And that could have an effect on a game. So there's so many variables. So this for me goes into a matchup when you're looking at it. It seems on paper, when you take a very, I'll say a high level view, as not as fascinating. But once you get down into the weeds, I think it could go a lot of different ways.
Exactly. And like you mentioned, there could be a lot of changes to those teams, namely Man City, who are keeping an eye out for sure for the big one happening next weekend, the Champions League final. This, again, is a cup competition in the domestic league. And so could there be a chance? We've seen Stefan Ortega, who's been featuring more so recently in the last couple games for City. Does he get to start ahead of Ederson? We've seen as well Ake coming back from injury. Laporte has been featuring as well more recently, and Riyad Mahrez. Would these guys be sort of touted to start the game, keeping an eye out sort of for the Champions League final, and then sort of basically the bench that we saw with I think Chelsea, Man City, with your Kevin De Bruyne, Haaland, Gundogan, all of them on the bench. Will they be making an appearance later on? So very exciting to see that. And like you said, Man U themselves are missing a lot of players. More recently, they have had success with that Varane Lindelof partnership. So that's a good sign for them. But again, we still don't know sort of how going forward, which late in the season they had a little bit of a stumble when they weren't really scoring goals. How that will play out. I think still City should be favorites. The like you said, they split the sort of, if you're looking at it from the series home and away, they split the wins. But you can definitely make an argument City were the better team on both games, and just the way they finished the season, I definitely don't put it past them to get this win. What do you think would be Man U's sort of way to win if they have one, sort of secret weapon against this City team? Because if we're looking at it on paper, City are favorites, but is there a way? Is there a secret weapon that Man U could use to potentially get a win here?
Ferguson's not going to be able to pay off the referee anymore, so that's out of the cards, right? No, so I think what would be interesting to see is how they try to rejigger their midfield, because in the previous matchup, if I recall correctly, it was when this is when Bruno kind of had the phase of starting in the right wing position, and kind of playing as a false winger. He'll tuck in, kind of show around, and you really don't have to worry about the negative attributes that he can apply defensively, and have Casemiro and Fred really do the legwork in the midfield. So that in that matchup, if I recall correctly, Ericsson wasn't available. So you had a different kind of more shuttler like Savitzer coming in to be able to play those minutes. So I'll be very interested to see what Ten Hag does there. I think it would be very interesting if you kind of, with, as I said, the Antony's injury, and I wouldn't necessarily want to start Garnacho. I think that he could be more effective as kind of a super sub. Maybe you don't want to put the impact on him given the tough game this can potentially be. And you can kind of go in focusing solely on a counterattack position down on the left-hand side, in behind, which I would assume if Kyle Walker's not starting, that's the area of the pitch that you can potentially expose in behind them with the Sancho, with the Rashford, and really kind of focus defensively and tuck in the midfield. Even though Bruno, like I said, has his area of weakness defensively, if he's at least able to shift in the midfield, put more bodies there, help cover the likes of probably a John Stones stepping into midfield or Rodri, that could potentially be beneficial. So for me, I could foresee a lineup if you have all of Fred, Casemiro, Ericsson, as well as Bruno in the starting 11. I think that could go well. And then of course, like I said, hitting them on the counter. That's in my opinion, Manchester United's only shot of kind of procuring offense, which in my opinion is their best way to score, have his best way to score against the bigger teams this year. There's never been a team I feel like that kind of can string, maybe 20, 30 passes together and break them down opposition consistently. That hasn't really been their forte. But they're still very capable at doing that on the break. However, the odds are heavily against them right now. Manchester United Man City to win, is minus 400, meaning you have to put for a bet of $100, you only win $25 as a payout. It's not much money, so they're very, very heavy underdogs there. But for me, the best opportunity for Manchester United to get something out of the game, like I had said, is to pack the midfield, hope to be able to get something on the counter, and really hope, as you had mentioned, that Lindelof-Varane partnership with Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw are kind of do the business defensively and make sure that Haaland has a quieter day than he did at least in their first matchup.
Yeah. Holland, he has had a great season, but I think recently he hasn't been part of the scoring sheet. I think definitely not as much for the end of the season, and I don't know. I don't think he scored against Real Madrid, if I recall, but they definitely won that tie comfortably enough. And one thing to note is even, one of the concerns would have been for sure City, if they concede early, will they be able to come back? Well, Madrid did score them first in the first leg, and they were able to get themselves back into the game, and which I don't really see too much of a problem for them. The way they sort of finished the season, to find a way to come back, even if they do go down. I guess my sort of concern would be if they do sort of start very, very slowly and they go more than one down, that could be a concern. But then also you have a lot of firepower coming off of the bench. that could definitely stifle and so get you back into the game. And if you do get in the lead, you have now a well enough shape with sort of if they go back to their three at the back to stifle any counterattack from Man U. You know, if Walker plays um, down that right hand side, that's going to be a good matchup for Rashford or anyone on the left hand side. Ruben Diaz has been fantastic. Nathan Ake, John Stones, will he be playing as a center back or maybe as a extra midfielder to sort of dominate that midfield? That's something we're yet to see. But yeah, they have more than enough firepower and definitely sound enough. You can make the argument this season compared to previous seasons to really hit you in different all types of ways and really come out of this tie as winners. I guess one thing that potentially Man U, not saying they will try to do this, but if they are losing heavily, do they leave in a foot in a tackle, going extra hard for a couple with sort of an eye for that Champions League final coming up for City? What do you think, Mac?
I know you're coming from the position majority of this is just for bands, and you kind of definitely have an agenda there. And if I'm Ten Hag, I'm on board with you. This is 100% the game plan. You can't let your noisy neighbors, as Ferguson calls them, you know, get the treble because that was your thing. That was your calling card. Oh, we have the best Premier League team of all time because we got that treble back in I think it was '99. And this really just swipes it up on the table because you would argue, given the points totals, given the level of position, this team is better. They would see if they go ahead and do this automatically becomes, in my opinion, A1 choice or 1A choice of the best Premier League team in history. Understand the individual. I'm also including FA Cup of results in terms of Champions League results, and Man City themselves has had better seasons individually in terms of points total. But just looking at the talent as well with the silverware, with the combination of both of those, they're in that conversation easily and in all likelihood at the top of that conversation. So if I know it's kind of the dark arts of football, but 100%. If I'm Fred, if I'm Harry Maguire, if I'm whoever potentially may come on, or has any opportunity, if you're down 2 or 3 nothing the 70th minute, this is your final game of the season. Why not start next season a little bit later with a red card? That's okay. That's fine. There's no big problems there. The interesting part would be is who do you hurt? Because I think to kind of follow up every something you said earlier with Holland is that he's only had 1 goal in his last 6 games played for Manchester City. So this is the driest of dry spells that he's had under a Man City jersey. So do you go ahead and try to injure Kevin De Bruyne? Because there's only so many bullets in the chamber that you can get to cause an injury, right? But to take a step back, though, I think that this and for Manchester United, in some ways, they need to come out, in my opinion, with a strong performance because towards the end of the Premier League season, they did just squeeze into the Champions League. But if they add a title, another one, this puts them in the conversation of this is even more reinforcements of what Ten Hag is capable of doing and the importance for them to, even if they do end up losing, have such a strong competition in the game, maybe take it to extra time, maybe take it to penalties, or have kind of a nail biter towards the end where, hey, we were so close. These were the tools that you gave me last summer and in January. I need a little bit more to kind of get us to the next ledge. So I think making sure that you come out with a positive performance is absolutely vital for Man U. Even though, yes, even though I would argue you want to win the game, you more so even want Man City to lose the game, which is an interesting spot that if you're a Manchester United fan, you're in. So overall, I think this will be a fascinating affair.
Great way to put it, for sure. Great way to put it. Performance has to be there, and I think I'm sure you've seen sort of the clips going around after Man U won their last game of the season. Ten Hag, talking to the crowd at Old Trafford, saying, we're gonna continue to do our best, and obviously this is the sort of next step forward. And if they can, that would be a quite a successful season, I think, overall, if you're looking at it. So definitely something to keep in mind of and so all those players will be galvanized, ready to go for this game, and we'll see what happens. One thing that we'll see what happens after this game, will this be one player that you mentioned, Harry Maguire's last game potentially for Manchester United? I think you were talking about some rumors about the contract being bought out, and Maguire on his way out of Man U. What do you think about that, Mac?
I think it was a matter of time because they were looking to. It's a tough position for them. They necessarily don't want to play him so many minutes because he has been a detriment to the team when he has played. But at the same time, if you're not playing him, there's no way for him to show how good of a player is. Where someone's going to come in and make a purchase for him, where the 80 million that you paid for him, 80 odd, the most expensive defender ever in Premier League history, or I think even world football history. You're able to recoup some of that value back. But instead, they're in a position where it might just be better for, in a lot of comparison to a lot of to the NBA, where Westbrook will pay you to leave. Like it's such a negative. We need to get you out of our club, so they are no longer kind of a cause of concern. Where maybe the toxicity in the dressing room is there because he's still the captain technically. So even though this reports are his last game, that his contract's going to get bought out, I think it was for around £10 million. You can't let this continue to drag on because the beams, probably the aura around him is probably just such a negative atmosphere, considering that he's your leader. At least kind of, I would say if you would poll the Manchester United players in the locker room, he's not. He just wears the armband, right? So I think that's a very interesting aspect of this and where he goes next, because this has been, I would argue, one of the worst signings in Premier League history, easily. I really would be very interested to see if we would have kind of a conversation or a draft of, what is the worst. This is definitely one of the ones up there. So it's unfortunate that it's turned out this way, but I think at a certain point, and they've kind of gone to it, it just might be better for him to go. The funny part though is that with him gone, Bruno's the captain, which I don't know if is much of an improvement in terms of personality or character, right? It's hard to get worse than Maguire, but Bruno's not that much better, right? No, really. Like, I don't understand if this all things being equal right now. I would rather have, I would rather have Casemiro as the captain. I would rather have Varane as the captain, even if he doesn't say anything, doesn't even speak English. Just kind of that personality of keeping it simple. I'd almost take anyone else in their starting 11 in all actuality if you were to quiz me, but still better than Maguire.
But I mean, I know a lot of those are maybe just us poking fun at Man U, but I think ultimately this redrives the point that we're making, that it should be Ten Hag's team now. Look how far they've gone with him. His decision, if he thinks parting ways with Maguire and or several other Manchester United players at the end of the season is best, then I think that's sort of who you sort of back going forward. And also, who is going to come in? There's reports Chelsea player Mason Mount is looking to sign for Man U, and so that's something interesting to see. Is that sort of what he has in mind? Will that sort of change? Because obviously they've played more of a 4-2-3-1 this year, but not sure if Mason Mount is going to be occupying one of those 8 spots moving forward. What's going to happen then with Bruno Fernandes? Is he going to be also part of a sort of 4-3-3, or he's going to be playing on the right hand side more so going forward? So a lot to happen in the off season. It's just as the season wraps up, a lot of those rumors are happening, and definitely one to look out for. Mac.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Mount situation because I think that's fascinating, because I think that's a step in a different direction that we've seen this club play in, where I don't know how. It'll be very interesting to see. Can you play both Mount and Bruno Fernandes at the same time? Or is the idea for kind of Mason Mount to be the next Christian Eriksen? Because that definitely, you have to have a succession plan there. Because there have been reports where Mount's out of contract with Chelsea. There are going to be people coming in to be able to step in and make an offer. Pochettino doesn't seem to have him in his favor. And Man U has been the most reported team, because Liverpool, they're probably their only competition, I guess reports earlier, are so focused on McAllister from Brighton that Mount's kind of being left as a second option. And if he's able to kind of switch in, I'll be very interested to see how that could potentially impact everybody else in the club, because you don't want to bring him in and put him in the exact same situation where he was with Chelsea, which if you're playing both him and Mount and Bruno, it's the exact same thing in a lot of ways, in my opinion, as Havertz and Mount, where even though they kind of occupy the same positions and they're going to taking away from each other versus it being additive. So Ten Hag has a plan going to this. You got to kind of give the keys to him, give the reins to him. Given what he's done, I would argue with not the greatest start 11 this year, bringing it to at least winning a cup, bringing another cup final, Champions League all over again. I think you got to kind of give him kind of the reins to do what he wants. And if he feels like Mount's going to be a good fit, got to have faith in him.
Exactly. So a lot to watch. I'm sure Mason Mount will be watching, maybe alongside Harry Kane potentially as well, with his maybe links to Man U. But definitely one to watch, which we'll definitely cover in our next podcast. So today, that concludes our podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social media. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Sunday when we review the FA Cup final taking place this weekend. Mac, thank you for joining us.
Chirp, chirp. Let's go.
And see you guys soon.